Hey, what's up guys, how are you all doing today? It's me, your boy Orban Caste Kevinish back here with another brand new video and I hope you guys are having a great day. So I'm here to give my Canadian Grand Prix predictions. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video guys. So starting off with my top 3 qualifiers. Well, for the pole position I have the obvious Max Verstappen. Well, I don't think I need to add any more to it. The name is more than enough. I think it's a reason of its own. And let's quickly move on to the driver that I have in P2. Well, in P2 I have Fernando Alonso. Well, I'm sure that Fernando will be able to work his magic. I mean, he managed to do it last year. He managed to put the car in the front row, the Alpine, and I think the Aston Martin this year is certainly better than the Alpine that he was driving last year. And I know that the condition was a bit mixed and it was a wet weather quali, and towards the end the track was constantly improving, so it was not a huge surprise for Fernando to put that Alpine on the front row, but I'm sure Fernando will be able to work his magic in the Aston Martin. And also let's not forget that Aston Martin is bringing their upgrades to their AMR 23 race car for the Canadian Grand Prix, so their pace should improve. I mean, it should put them right back where they were at the start of the season as being a consistent podium contender. And Fernando also expects for Aston Martin to win at least 1 or 2 races. So with all those kind of statements, I'm sure that Fernando will be able to put that Aston Martin on the front row alongside the pole sitter Max Verstappen. So the driver that I have in P3 is Sergio Perez. Well, I really hope that this happens. I hope he doesn't bottle in quali. I hope he doesn't bottle in the race as well, because last year in Canadian Grand Prix he bottled in the qualifying session starting P16. He had gearbox issue which then led him to retire from the race. So last year he did not have a good Canadian Grand Prix. So to make up for all of that and for all the lackluster performance that he had so far this season, I hope he can at least put the car in the top 3 in qualifying. So I have Sergio Perez in P3. So in terms of the big gainers of the weekend, for the team I have Alpine. Well, I feel like they would make a step forward and I feel like their car certainly has the pace. So I expect for both the Alpine drivers to get into Q3 quite comfortably and to actually qualify in the top 7 with both the cars. Even in the race, I feel like Alpine should be able to score points with both their drivers. So in terms of the big gainers for the team, I have Alpine. So moving on to the driver who I think is going to have the biggest gains, I think it's going to be Lando Norris. Well, Lando is a driver who's usually pretty good under 1 lap pace, and I expect for him to do really good here as well, taking the motivation and confidence that he got off of his qualifying performance in the Spanish Grand Prix. I feel like he would be able to emulate a very similar performance here in Canada as well. So I feel like Lando Norris is going to be the driver who's going to have the biggest gains in the midfield. So moving on to the biggest flop of the weekend. Well, in terms of the teams, I have Alfa Romeo. Well, they had kind of a mixed to a decent weekend in the Spanish Grand Prix with one of the cars scoring points, but I don't expect them to be doing so well here in Canada. With the long back straight, I think they would struggle. So I don't expect them to be up there as they were in the previous races. So I have Alfa Romeo as the biggest flop of this weekend. So in terms of the driver that I think who's going to have the toughest weekend or the biggest flop in terms of performance, I have Nick De Vries. Well, it's a slightly high speed track and I expect Nick De Vries to struggle this weekend. So I have Nick De Vries as the biggest flop of this weekend in terms of driver. So moving on to my bold predictions now. So the first bold prediction that I have is we're gonna have a battle between Mercedes versus Aston Martin for the podium. This is quite possible because Mercedes are right up there now. I think they are right now the second best car if I'm not wrong, and I think Aston is clearly the third best. And with the upgrades that Aston is bringing to their car for this race, I expect a huge step forward from Aston Martin, and I think it will be level pegging between Mercedes and Aston Martin in the Canadian Grand Prix. So there is surely going to be a fight or a battle between both these teams in this Grand Prix. So moving on to my second bold prediction, I have a surprise knockout in Q2. I expect one of the front runners to make either a mistake or have a reliability issue, which causes for them to get knocked out in Q2. It could be the Ferrari, it could be either Mercedes, Aston Martin, or even Red Bull. And I really hope that Red Bull driver would not be Sergio Perez. So I think there's going to be a surprise knockout in Q2. So moving on to my third bold prediction, I have Alpine having a top 5 finish. Yes, I feel like either Esteban Ocon or Pierre Gasly would easily be able to finish in the top 5 with their Alpine. I'm not saying that both the Alpines are going to finish in the top 5. I say one of the Alpine is going to finish in the top 5 in the race. So it's pretty doable, and I think it's also kind of bold. So that's why I put it in my bold prediction. So those are my 3 bold predictions. Now let's move on to my podium finishes. Well, for the race winner, I have, unsurprisingly, Max Verstappen. Well, is this even a doubt at this point? Seeing the kind of pace that he has with that RB19 is just, again, it's scary, but it's also an exciting prospect to see what more he has on offer. So I have Max Verstappen as my race winner for the Canadian Grand Prix. And in P2, I have Sergio Perez. Well, I feel like he should be able to make a quick work of Fernando Alonso to get up to P2, and I think he would have a pretty lonely race. I don't think he would have the pace of Max Verstappen, but I also don't feel like he would have a similar pace to the Aston Martins or the Mercedes. I mean, if he has a pace deficit that puts him closer to the Mercedes and the Aston Martin, then it is just sad, because that Red Bull should be faster. So I feel like Sergio Perez would have a pretty lonely race once he gets past Fernando Alonso, and he would finish the race in P2. In P3, I have Fernando Alonso. Well, no surprise. I feel like he would be able to continue his podium streak, though he missed out on it both in Baku and in the Spanish Grand Prix. I feel like he would get back to the podium step with these new upgrades that Aston Martin is bringing to their car. And Fernando is also a very consistent driver that I feel like as long as he has a car that has good pace consistently, he would be able to pull off some magical results like we have already witnessed a handful of times in the past. So these are my podium finishes, guys. Max Verstappen as the race winner, Sergio Perez taking the second place, and Fernando Alonso finishing third, wrapping up the top 3 podium spots. And this is also my Canadian Grand Prix prediction, guys. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and let me know in the comments on what is your prediction for the Canadian Grand Prix. Who do you think is gonna qualify in the top 3? Which team or driver you think is gonna have the biggest gains or have a disastrous performance? What is your 3 bold predictions, and also who is your top 3 podium finishes for the race? I'm excited to know your predictions on it. And with that being said, I would like to wrap up this video, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the Autobahncast YouTube channel already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and also hit that bell icon and turn on all notifications so you get notified whenever I upload a brand new video. It's me, your boy Autobahncast, aka Vinesh, and I'm out. Love you guys, stay safe, peace.